Roster moves, yeah, we built from the grind. Draft day gems and the best all around. Scalp on the tape, breaking it clear. From first round lock to the late round tier. Cap space tight, but the vision's wide. Future of the league, we along for the ride. Colin Andrew on the grind non-stop. With props in each draft, we stay on top.
Hey, welcome back to the Draft Fellows podcast. I'm Andrew Mertig. That is Kyle Fellows, and together we are the Draft Fellows. Make sure you're checking us out on YouTube or our audio version on your favorite podcasting platform. Kyle, how are you doing?
I'm doing really great. You know, we are in the heat of the preseason, and we are waiting for a Micah Parsons trade. Like, the drama is fantastic, and we're back to talk football again. So it can't get better than that. How you doing, Andrew?
Really good, yeah, and it's like all these little minor trades that I keep missing.
Yes.
We're waiting for the shoe to drop on Micah Parsons and Trey Hendrickson, maybe Brian Robinson, and then you get like this crazy Devon Vele trade that no one can make any sense of at all.
No.
But hey, anytime you can get a very average second-year, 27-year-old wide receiver, and you're a team that's projected to be pretty bad, you got to do it, right?
You got to do it. You got to move those future assets for like the win now situation. Absolutely.
That fourth round pick might end up being a top 100 pick because of how
that's
bad
what someone was like.
are.
That might be the first pick in the fourth round. Like, it's so like you have to be a roster tilting player to fetch a fourth round pick in most circumstances, right? Like it was fun to see that pop up and think that it was fake and then realize that it was real. So that's where we're at.
Sean Payton still pulling strings in New Orleans. But speaking of the Saints may have a top 100 pick in the fourth round, we wanted to take a little time today to go through our projections for who is going to be picking at the top of the draft and who is going to be winning the Super Bowl for the 2025-2026 season. And so Kyle and I each went through separately without talking to each other, which is going to seem suspicious when you see our results. But we went to playoffpredictors.com, one of my favorite websites out there, and we predicted the outcome of every single NFL game for this season. I was exhausted by the end, but we did it. And we're going to go through all of our predictions. First, we're going to go division by division. Then we'll talk about the draft order, and then, of course, what our projected playoff outcomes are. I think last year we did pretty well. You better than me, for sure, because I thought the Raiders were going to make the playoffs, and that was not a good prediction. But we have some stuff that's eerily aligned on here, and then we have some stuff that I think will be a little contentious, and we can get into all of it. So we're going to kick things off first with the AFC East. And if you do decide to, or if you're listening on the audio version, you can also check out the exact records because we won't just read everyone off to you on the YouTube version as well. But we had the exact same order for the AFC East: Bills, Patriots, Dolphins, Jets, in that order. We had every finish within one game in this whole division. So kudos to you for being so smart.
Yeah, a lot of this is pretty remarkable that we ended up the way that we did. And I guess the AFC East here is fascinating because, of course, like the Bills are going to be on top. I think that's no one's, surprise at this point. But we both see the Patriots making a good jump this year, and that's going to be really fascinating to see if that pans out. A lot of things have to click for that to happen. But then I think the other interesting thing, obviously, I think a lot of people think that like maybe the Jets can ascend and like slowly kind of build a new culture there, but that's probably going to be a slow process. I think the surprising thing here is just that like the Dolphins aren't a team that we expect to be at the top of the division. Like, this is a third place team in both of our eyes, and a team that was competing for, playoffs a few years ago. And now like, it seems like that's a culture there that you kind of wonder what's going on in Miami. So I think that was probably the most surprising thing in this exercise was where the Dolphins finished for me at 7-10.
Yeah, I think that there's a really interesting case to be made for the Dolphins. I just think that there's too many question marks. And with the Patriots, part of it is the schedule. And, if you've been paying attention to any of like the national news, the Patriots are favored in a ton of games this season, which is very surprising given how they performed the last couple of years. But one, it's the optimism about Drake May, and two, I think this defense is going to be outstanding.
Yeah.
And I think, with that fourth place schedule and a lot going for them, kind of a young upstart team that we think could be pretty surprising. Maybe not as much as Washington was last year, but in that same vein of a young upstart team that we're really excited about. So transitioning over to the AFC North, again, we have the exact same finish. We go Ravens, Steelers, Bengals, Browns. Both of us had the Ravens and Steelers make the playoffs, with the Ravens coming out on top in the division.
I think it's fascinating because I don't necessarily think that Aaron Rodgers is the linchpin to making the Steelers so much better. It's just that that's how this came together. Like, it was hard to pick against them, especially at home. I think there were a lot of favorable matchups for them on the road, so they stole a couple of those. And so they ended up at 10-7 for me. Of course, Ravens on top doesn't surprise anybody. And then it's just, the Bengals are a tough team. Like, there's a lot of talent on that roster, but it just feels like they are kind of in an uphill climb in this division, especially with the way that defense is just expected to be so bad. So it's an interesting division. I just think that the Ravens probably run away with it, but it's going to be fascinating in the middle there between the Steelers and the Bengals probably.
Yeah, and I had the Bengals with 2 more wins than you did, finishing at 9-8. And for me, when I was going through, the question I kept asking myself is, do I think the Bengals can score 35 or 40 points in this game? Because their defense is so bad.
Yes.
And that's even with Trey Hendrickson. And that's a question mark. So I think probably, not having Trey Hendrickson, I would lean a little bit more towards where you went with 7-10. But this is a team that's just, they're going to have to outscore everybody. And I think that's going to get exhausting as the season wears on.
Let me ask you one question before we move on to the next division, because we didn't really talk about the Browns because it's the Browns, but we both have them at the bottom. But is there a world Joe Flacco is going to be the starter there? Is there a world where we totally underrate this team? They're not going to win this division, but just sitting here looking at these records, I do wonder if there's a chance that a Joe Flacco kind of cavalier effort there in Cleveland, not to be tongue-in-cheek with the Cavaliers in Cleveland, but that they might actually outperform what they're expecting because their backs are against the wall. And it's just, with Joe Flacco and the way he's performed, I wonder. I have them at 4-13. I kind of wonder if I'm really selling the Browns short on that.
Maybe. I mean, I think it's possible. Any team in the NFL that has a certain level of talent, I think, can hit into that 6, 7, 8 win range. It's always possible. I just don't know, because there's some superstars on this team. Talking about Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward, and they have some fun weapons on offense. And you mentioned a veteran presence in Joe Flacco. What we do often forget is that Joe Flacco, late in his career, has also turned into a interception monster. And so the negative plays kind of come with the positive as well. But yeah, I mean, I think there is some ceiling there. I think it's kind of capped out at that 6-7 win range. But I just think the overall depth of this team is so poor that any adversity is going to be really, really difficult for them to overcome. And then there's sort of the idea of is their head coach and GM a little bit are they in a lame duck situation? I know Kevin Stefanski has been outstanding a couple of years, and he's been really awful a couple of years. And so, how do the Browns view him? Does that become a thing, right? The team rallies around the coach. So there's some possibilities there for sure.
All right, let's flip over to this next division, which is the AFC West. What do you got?
Yeah, so this is the first time we've had a disagreement in the order, but it's not by much. And so I went with the Chiefs, Chargers, Broncos, Raiders. You went Chiefs, Broncos, Chargers, Raiders. You have 3 teams from this division making the playoffs. So that is really interesting, and a much bigger win total than what I projected for each one.
So you lived and learned with the Raiders. You went from a playoff team all the way to 6-11 at the bottom of the division. So I love that. It's just funny how much things change, and the optimistic outlook shifts in the NFL. But Chiefs, of course, top. For me, I was really surprised with where I had the Broncos at the end of this at 13-4. But for me, it was the expectation is that defense is going to be phenomenal. Now, maybe the offense doesn't keep up with that defense, but in a lot of the matchups that they had, again, strength playing at home with that defense, it's just how it kind of came out to me. And I don't think they actually get to 13-4, but that's how I ended up with it. And then the Chargers are going to be a good team too. So like you said, 3 teams make the playoffs from this group. I was pretty surprised to have the Broncos as high as I did, and kind of felt like they'd be closer to where you have them, honestly.
Yeah, and I for the Chiefs, I had them at 11-6, and I was just giving the benefit of the doubt of the other juggernaut teams in the AFC of having something to prove by finally beating the Chiefs. And that tends to happen in the regular season. We've seen it with Buffalo. They can beat Kansas City in the regular season, then the playoffs come and something weird always happens. I also had this division beating itself up a little bit. You'll notice the Chiefs are 2-4 in the division, which is outlandish. That I think that would be more losses than Patrick Mahomes has against the AFC West in his entire career. So given the benefit of the doubt to the Chargers here in squeaking out a playoff appearance over the Broncos. So it's fun to have some differences there. I don't see the Broncos as quite as good as you do, but I can see where you're coming from for sure.
It would be wild for the Chiefs to win that division and be 2-4 within the division like you have them. Like that it'd be interesting to know how often that has happened. But I like that you accurately reflected that this division will ultimately probably beat up on itself, and probably we won't have any pristine records at the end of the season because all those teams are so talented.
So then we transition over to the AFC South, which once again we have in the exact same order. And so we went with Texans, Jaguars, Colts, Titans. I had the Texans and Jaguars making the playoffs. You just had the division winner Texans going there as well.
Yeah, a lot of like this is one that I feel like could go so many different ways. Like the Texans, I think we want to see them take a step, and we want to see CJ Stroud with a little bit more control of the offense, as it's been reported. Like that offense as a whole taking that step forward with all the new, rookie infusion of those wide receivers that they drafted and those kinds of things. But at the same time, like the Jags could take that step forward. The Colts are in a weird spot where, like, I think we're trying to save jobs with Daniel Jones being the quarterback there. The Titans were the one I had the hardest time just looking at their schedule, going like they're going to pull off a bunch of wins with a rookie quarterback there. Maybe they do. Like that'd be an amazing story. I just think it's going to take more time, especially with what's there as weapons for that young rookie quarterback. So, but really, like between the Jags and Texans, like I could see that going a lot of different ways, and this could be a really fun division to track throughout the season.
Yeah, and I think the Texans defense just continues to get better, and that gives them a super safe floor. I thought that me having the Jaguars at 10-7 was going to be pretty hot takey, and then I saw that you also had them with the same record, so maybe not as much, but that's a young team that I think could bounce back in a really big way. I'm super excited to see what that Jacksonville squad looks like this year under new leadership. So then transitioning over to the NFC, we'll start with the East, and I have Eagles, Cowboys, Commanders finishing 7-10 following a NFC Championship run, and then the Giants at the bottom of the division. How did you see this one?
It's interesting. Like I ended up, like you said, Washington is my second spot behind the Eagles, but I did anticipate some regression for Washington, just not to the same degree that you did. And maybe it's not even a regression on like how they performed last year, just like how they ended, the offseason. I mean, if people are viewing the Commanders through that offseason performance, I mean, people didn't really expect them to go and play the way that they did entering the playoffs last year. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes for them. I think for me, it's just like you still have a decent amount of respect on the Dallas Cowboys. And I just think that this could be kind of a rough year for them. I think there's some morale things that they're trying to work through. I think they probably need to rebuild, but they really haven't committed to doing that. And so I just think that Dallas is going to potentially outperform the 6-11 record I have for them, but I just think they probably are comfortably going to be the third best team in this division.
Yeah, and that's fair. To me, the Cowboys are a little bit like the Bengals of the NFC. I just think their defense is a little bit better. I think that offense is going to be super explosive. If Dak can stay healthy, I mean, there's just no reason that CD and George Pickens won't be monsters. And I think Jake Ferguson's in line to have a huge jump this year. That running game's terrible, but it may not matter. They might just throw the ball 45 times a game. And, on defense, it's like if they can get the Micah situation cleared up enough that he is happy-ish throughout the year. And I think that defense is opportunistic enough that if the offense is scoring points, they can take the ball away. I agree. I did not have them as a playoff team, but I do think that there is a little bit more upside than you were seeing. But, we'll see. Also, it didn't help that I had them 4-2 in the division and you had them 1-5 in the division. That's the complete difference.
Oh my
in
gosh,
their
yeah.
records. So,
Yeah.
that'll be it'll be super important because that division will continue to be a slugfest, as it seemingly always is. And then we'll jump over to the NFC North, which is always contentious. I once again had 3 teams making the playoffs, but the records highly deflated. I had the Lions winning the division at 11-6, Packers 10-7, Vikings 10-7. All 3 of those go into the NFC playoffs. And then I had the Bears finishing 6-11 in last place.
Yeah, I just had the 2 teams from the North making the playoffs, the Packers and the Lions. And then I had a dead heat at 8-9 between the Chicago Bears and the Vikings. And so that's just, I think those 2 teams are going to be interesting to see how things go, whether you say that Caleb's going to have a better season this year and that's going to help the Bears. And then does JJ McCarthy live up to the hype enough to like hold this Vikings team up? Like, because they're kind of holding on to some veteran presence there to make a run, but can he support that as a young player? We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I mean, I think the Lions are still, they have to be the favorite in this division. They are the most talented team in this division. I just think there's going to be a little bit of natural regression that's expected. Maybe they overcome it, but when you purge the coaching staff like you do, not only on offense, like everybody talks about Ben Johnson, but of course with the defense, losing a head coaching candidate out to the New York Jets, like this is a very different team entering 2025 than what we saw in 2024.
Yeah, for sure. And we don't see the Vikings all that different. There's a 2-game discrepancy between what I had as their record and you had as theirs. The Bears were also 2 games apart, but it does seem like a pretty big gap between 6 wins and 8 wins. But that's a super interesting thing. I'm not as much of a believer in the Bears defense. I think they were really good last year. I don't know if they can repeat that performance. I do think their offense takes a step, but I'm not sure it takes enough of a step to overcome how difficult this division really is. So we will see. And Bears fans will hate what I have to say. So that is fine. I'm used to that one. NFC South. This is one I think my division winner is going to be pretty controversial, but I have the Falcons winning the division. Tied with the Buccaneers, but both of them making the playoffs. Falcons edge them out in the tiebreaker. And I have the Panthers and the Saints much further behind.
Yeah, this is surprising to me. This is a Michael Penix conversation, I think. So that's exciting to think about, like what could be that step for him. Obviously, the Falcons believe in him because of the strange way that they've handled the Kirk Cousins situation. Like there is belief in that building. So maybe this happens, but I do have the Bucks still on top of this division comfortably. I think they are the most talented team, and I think there's so much continuity there. I just think it makes a ton of sense that they walk away with this division relatively easily. Do have the Falcons second, but they are a 6-11 team, so there's a big drop off there. And then we've got a little bit of a mess at the bottom with the Saints and the Panthers, still trying to make sense of things. I do like that you have the Panthers ahead of the Saints, and I think that makes sense. Like, they're in a place where I think that there's a chance that Carolina takes a step forward, and I do think that the Saints, I don't know, like this is a team that is going to be searching for soul, I think, throughout the season, whether that's starting quarterback or several other things. But so I actually like you have the Panthers stacked ahead of the Saints, but mine just turned out with the Saints 1 game better than the Panthers.
Yeah, for sure. And for me, the Falcons' optimism is I think they might have finally figured out their pass rush situation. And I love the opportunity for this defense to take a big step forward. And then I think Penix plus all of those great offensive weapons can be a recipe for success. But again, I'm an optimist, and I picked the Raiders to make playoffs last year. So, just remind me how stupid I am later in the season if it doesn't pan out for me. Last division, we got the NFC West. This was a massive mess. And I will point out, both of us predicted every single team to finish between 7-10 and 10-7. And so we see this the same way, but our orders are wildly different. I had the Seahawks winning the division, the only team to make the playoffs, but the Cardinals, 49ers, and Rams in that order very closely behind, whereas Kyle went with the Rams beating the 49ers in a tiebreaker, but both LA and San Francisco making the playoffs. And then you had the Seahawks just missing out with the Cardinals a little bit behind.
So this is probably the one division in football where I think you can make a legitimate argument that anybody can win this division. Now,
100%.
the Cardinals, I have a 7-10 at the bottom, but like you have them at 9-8 in second place in this division. Like they're the one that maybe you have the hardest time saying like they're a division winner, but all the pieces are there for them to take a step forward, right? So like I think they're going to compete. I think there's some, really good energy around that organization right now about some of the things that they're doing. So, but otherwise, like, I mean, this could go any way, and that's going to be so fun to like just see over the course of the season, like how it plays out. So many things have changed though. So that's really hard to predict, right? New quarterback in Seattle, like San Francisco isn't like the defensive juggernaut that they've always been. So like, is the offense going to carry enough of that load? Because they don't seem to have any healthy wide receivers. Like there's just so many things that are up in the air. But I have LA winning this division, which I feel relatively good about. But that all goes out the door if Matthew Stafford can't play 2/3 of the games. Like, I mean, that may be a low bar, but like if he ends up struggling with this injury, or maybe he's playing at like, I don't know, 70% most of the season, I feel like they don't end up at the top of the division. So I love the NFC West and just the discourse that's going to be there throughout the year of like, I feel like this division, like the last 2 weeks of the season is probably going to be the games we're tuning into to see like who actually ends up on top in the West.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was thinking. I was really nervous about Matthew Stafford, and so I was trying to toe the line of like, is he going to be healthy? Is he going to be 100%? Are they going to have to play Jimmy G? Like, I
Yeah.
don't know. And so that affected a lot of things. But I definitely see where you're coming from. At one point, I try not to look at the overall records as I'm going through predicting the games because it does influence me.
Yeah.
But at
right.
one point, I looked down and every team in the NFC West had the exact same record, like 3/4 of the way through the season. And I was like, all right, well,
Yep.
we know this one's going to be close. So that is super fun. Before we get into our playoff teams, just wanted to talk about the draft order because, of course, you and I talk a lot of draft, a lot of roster building, and these are the things that influence that. And so for me, I had the Saints with the worst record, tied with the Browns, but the Saints won the quote unquote tiebreaker to have the first overall pick. The Cleveland Browns are number 2, Tennessee Titans 3, New York Giants 4, and 5th is the New York Jets. So those would be the top 5 according to my simulation.
Okay, so I'm not incredibly different. Actually, Andrew and I share 4 of the top 5 picks. I actually don't have the Saints in the top 5. They were my 6th team, so they're just on the outside looking in. And I have the Panthers doing far worse. So my top 5, picking number 1 overall, is the Tennessee Titans, then the Panthers, the Jets, the Browns, and the Giants. So that would be fascinating just because the Titans would be picking atop a board a year after they picked their, presumed quarterback of the future. So what they would do as far as like auctioning that off, or is there a conversation, did we pick the right quarterback? Like that would be a fun one to see play out.
Yeah, in what we anticipate way too early to be a really good quarterback class. You have the Titans who probably don't need a quarterback. Now, if the Panthers finish as bad as you have them projected, that they probably are looking for a quarterback, but the Jets we know are, the Browns probably, if they're finishing there. The Giants have Jackson Dart, so maybe not. And then the Saints, who we both had in our top 6, definitely looking for a quarterback. So there's some teams up there that are going to be in that quarterback market for sure. Jumping over to the playoffs. So the highlighted teams for those of you on YouTube are the winners, but in the AFC, I had the Texans taking out the Chargers, the Chiefs taking care of the Jaguars, and the Ravens taking out the Steelers in a very boring wild card where all of the home teams won.
I had the Broncos going on the road and knocking off the Texans with that defense there in Denver. I had the Ravens staying at home, beating the Chargers, the 6th seed, and I had the Chiefs beating the 7th seed Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, if you had picked the Texans to beat the Broncos, we would have had the same 3 winners, which would have been very bad
Wild.
content.
Yeah.
In the NFC, we have some very different things going on here. I have the Buccaneers going on the road to beat the Seahawks. I have the Atlanta Falcons beating
Stop.
the Green Bay Packers
No.
in Atlanta.
Oh my
Ooh,
gosh.
that's a hard one to say. And then I have the Vikings as the 7th seed, upsetting the Detroit Lions in
What?
Detroit.
What?
Wild.
Just thinking about JJ McCarthy returning home to Michigan to take down the Detroit Lions. Like the stories just write themselves.
Good.
Okay, so on my side here, I have the Green Bay Packers taking down the Tampa Bay Bucks because I'm not going to pick against them like Andrew. Like, what in the world, man? Like, picking the Falcons. So Green Bay over Tampa Bay, and then I have LA Rams beating the San Francisco 49ers, and then the Lions do win. They get to host the playoff game, and they beat the Commanders, so they get a little bit of revenge there this time around.
We're going to have very different NFCs. NFC
It's good.
projections when
It's
we get
good.
to the divisional round. But in the AFC, we're very similar. In fact, I think we're going to have the same outcome. So the Ravens take out the Chiefs in Baltimore, finally slaying the Kansas City Demon. And then the Buffalo Bills are going to take care of the Texans in Buffalo.
Okay, so I have the Ravens on the road taking down the Chiefs because no one needs to see the Chiefs again. And then I have the Bills taking down the Broncos as the 5 seed.
So we are going to have identical AFC championship matchups.
There you-
However, in the NFC, very different. I have the Atlanta Falcons beating their divisional rival, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, at home to advance the NFC championship, and then the Eagles taking care of the upstart Minnesota Vikings.
You are committed to this Atlanta Falcons business, I will tell you. I've got the LA Rams upsetting the Lions, breaking the hearts of everyone in Detroit again. They advance to the championship game to face the Eagles, who took down the 5 seed Green Bay Packers. So your NFC championship is Rams, Eagles.
We aren't very good homers in this.
No, it's probably not statistically helpful. Yeah, that's bad.
Advancing to the championship round, I have Bills over Ravens, and then the Eagles taking out the Falcons. So boring me, 2 1 seeds advancing to the Super Bowl in Buffalo and Philadelphia.
You can count on Andrew and I just to be honest with you, because we could have changed this to make this more exciting, but we're going to get really similar here. I've got the Bills over the Ravens, and I have the Eagles over the Rams to get us to the Super Bowl round.
All right, same Super Bowl matchup. So it's Bills Eagles. Hopefully, one of us picked the other team to win because this isn't looking good. And we didn't. We both picked the Buffalo Bills to finally get their first Super Bowl championship by taking down the Philadelphia Eagles. The Bills get to shut down their old stadium with this. I mean, obviously, the Super Bowl's not at their stadium, but a win in the AFC Championship game at home. Moving on, Josh Allen hoists the Lombardi. Anything to say about Buffalo taking it all this year?
It's just the perfect end to Hard Knocks. That this was all just like informed by our recency bias of watching, like what the Bills are up to there. But I mean, it's a good story. Like, you got to finally get over the Chiefs, get past the Ravens. Like, the AFC just seems like the Buffalo Bills are the best team that just can't quite get there. And it's been that way for a couple of maybe 3 decades. So it would be a fun way to see them go. I'm just glad it wasn't the Packers, because that's my fear, is that they're finally going to win it and it's going to be the Packers on the NFC side. But I'm also glad that you didn't stick with your Falcons all the way to the end here and give a Lombardi to the Atlanta Falcons, because I thought maybe we were ahead.
Definitely my Falcons. The thing about the Bills, like we've seen this go multiple directions. You think about the Chargers with Phillip Rivers, and they just never could get over Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. Like, it just every year they were one of the best teams in the AFC, and they just could never quite get there.
Yeah.
But then you also think back, the Packers of the 90s could never get past the Cowboys, and then suddenly the Panthers beat them, and it opened up an avenue. And I think the Packers would have rolled the Cowboys in 96 anyways, but that gave them the avenue to go ahead and win a Super Bowl. And I think for Buffalo, it's time to get over it. Josh Allen is at the point in his career where he can really lead this team to great things. I think that defense is really good. I think the weapons will be much better this year than people anticipate. I think Keon Coleman could take a step. I think we could see a resurgence from Dalton Kincaid. And I think Khalil Shakir is a better player than you think. And, you add in James Cook and Ray Davis. And I think it's a really, really good team. They'll be right in the mix. Could be anybody, but I think the Bills have a great opportunity in front of them to be the Super Bowl champions.
Absolutely. So this has been a lot of fun. Yeah, a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with the process and surprised myself a couple times about the way that it makes you excited to just watch the season and be like, this is what we think is going to happen, but the reality is none of this is going to happen. It's going to get weird. There's going to be injuries. There's going to be terrible, stories, interruptions to what is going to be an incredible season. So gets you ready for football, and love the process of it. But make sure you stick with us throughout the season, and we'll continue to talk about these things. But thanks for joining us for this show. Make sure you like and subscribe to the show. We appreciate that. Helps us out a ton. But from the draft room to the gridiron, the Draft Fellas have got you covered. Until next time, stay tuned and stay in the game.
Yo, we breaking down strategy in the booth. Yeah, build a roster up, that's the ultimate truth. Brody and fellows, we breaking the lies. Yo, draft day, also watch these players strive. Hey, discussing picks, we analyze every skill. NFL dreams, we got that thrill. From college to the pros.